Welcome to the Insights and Innovators podcast from Market Research Institute International, where top research professionals share practical insights and innovation strategies to help researchers deliver more business impact and earn their strategic seat at the table. Today's episode is sponsored by Sports and Leisure Research Group. Sports and Leisure Research Group provides leading sports, travel, and media brands with actionable, customized, marketing research-driven insights. Now here's your host for today's episode.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today's episode of Insights and Innovators. I'm your host for today, Stan Sthanunathan. Today's topic is finding your seat at the table, a topic that's very close to all our hearts. In other words, it's all about making sure that insights drives mission-critical business decisions that makes the C-suite want to hear from you again and again. Today, we have lined up the perfect guest for this topic, Pam Forbus, Senior Vice President and Global Chief of Insights and Analytics at Mondelēz International. Today is week 3 for her, but she's not new to this industry. Pam is an iconic person in our industry for a long time. She recently received Lifetime Achievement Award from the Market Research Council, and previously, she was honored by Forbes as one of the most influential CMOs, a role that she's also played. So here we have a person who's been on both sides of the table. So it's a very unique opportunity for us. In this episode, Pam shares her perspectives on how to take the insights and analytics function to the next level. So whether you're on the client side or on the agency side, you will find her insights extremely valuable in shaping your career as well as shaping the role of your agency or the function that you represent. So welcome, Pam.
Really thrilled, really thrilled to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time out. I know as you start your new role, there'll be a lot of conflicting priorities. Really appreciate the fact that you've taken time to do this podcast on behalf of MRII.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Pam, can you briefly describe one example of when you delivered an insight that really made a difference to the senior-most leadership of your company? This example can be either as insight professional, that the role that you played, or something that you saw when you were a CMO of Pernod, and that insight was actually delivered to you. And you said, wow, that's an impactful one. Is there one example that comes to your mind?
Well, there's quite a few. One that sticks out that kind of really changed my mindset about what my job is was we were working on a Frito-Lay strat plan, and we had a lot of new data about consumer demand and where it was headed, a lot of foresights work. And this led to us actually facilitating the strat plan for the company. And it led to a business case to create a lot more small bag capacity in our plants. And that's not something that Insights typically gets involved in, but because we had a foresights on where demand was headed, we made the case, and it was something the operations had been trying to get for years, but just couldn't make the business case, but we did. And if you can remember back then, there was only a couple of multi-pack versions of Frito-Lay. Now there's dozens. And I know it's a multi-billion-dollar business, so I think it's probably one of the biggest impacts we had, but that's just one example.
No, that's a great example of an area that insights has impacted, which you would normally not associate with.
Yes.
Usually it's about we'll give you deep insights of consumers, communication, so on. But this is a fabulous example. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And now, having gotten that example, I'd love for you to tell us about yourself. Why don't you give the audience a quick intro into your career and your role today at Mondelez?
Sure. I won't drain my LinkedIn profile. That's out there for anyone to go look at. But I will say, I'd like to talk about early on where I kind of got the passion for this. Is I was actually working in the advertising agency on account side, and I saw someone really command senior leaders' attention because they knew the consumer deeply. They had the data, and they were account planners at Chiat/Day. Known for great account planners. And I said I wanted to be that. And I worked really hard to make that career decision. It took a couple years to make that switch. I took a title I went back in title, I went down in pay to make the client side switch over to Frito-Lay. I actually started as a contractor to see if I would work out, and I think my motivation has always been about having influence and impact.
Mm-hmm.
That really motivated me. And I felt like data and insights was the keys to the kingdom to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I quickly, rose through the ranks, so to speak, because I didn't see my job as creating research reports. I saw my job as impacting and influencing senior leaders because that's where my drive was.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that led to bigger and bigger responsibilities and more and bigger roles. And I'm sort of an accidental senior leader. I think I called myself a market researcher, but I think what we were growth leaders, and we had a track record to do that.
I love that phrasing, growth leaders. I think if you can have that as a moniker or a North Star, sky is the limit. Literally, sky is
Yes.
the limit. That's fabulous. The way you distilled it into two words, growth leaders. In your Lifetime Achievement Award acceptance speech, you made an observation that insight functions tend to be buried a few layers below the CEO. Why do you think that happened, and what can we learn from that?
I don't know why it happened. This all came out from a conversation I was having with Ed Keller, your executive director, and he was telling me, remember when the market research industry was just getting formed, their clients were the Henry Fords, the CEOs, and over time, these companies have built bigger marketing departments and bigger functions, and insights didn't really keep up with their level of stature and influence. I don't know why, but it is the question, right? Like I started thinking about, wow, if we're not at the table where the big questions are being asked, what questions are we being asked? And they're probably pretty tactical, and they're not that they're not important, but are they the most important? So if we are buried several levels below, and to your research suppliers, they're probably working with a junior insights manager, right? To answer some questions from a mid-level marketer. And who knows if that was what the CEO needed to know, and probably not. We can probably assume not. So how do we make sure, if you want to be a growth leader, you got to understand what the most important levers are to growth. And are you influencing those levers, or are you influencing a teeny little piece of the puzzle?
No, that is really, really fascinating. I think the asking ourselves a fundamental question on what is the question that we need to answer. If you lose track of that, then you'll get caught in day-to-day operations. And that's a really good perspective. Thank you so much. Now, if you cast back in your enormously successful career, what do we need to do to get the status that we deserve, given the importance of consumer centricity? I've not come across one company that says consumer centricity is not important. Everybody says it is the most important thing. And we are the consumer insights providers within any organization. What do we need to do to get the importance that we deserve?
That is the question, isn't it? Like everyone, and I think it's truly true in intent when they say our company is consumer centric, the consumer's at the center of everything we do. I don't think they're not saying it without being true. They really want that. But it's like when you look at your actions, what is the center of your decision making? It's really about decision making. Where are you putting your money, your time, your people, your efforts? That is your strategy. And for me, consumer centric organizations are data decision informed companies, because that data is consumer data. These are breadcrumbs, whether it's sales data or behavioral data or insights data. That is consumer data. And if you're not making decisions with that data at the center, you're not consumer centric. You're just saying you're consumer centric. So this isn't about having deep empathy and understanding the consumer's emotions and motivations. That's part of it for parts of what we do. But this is about every decision you're making. Where's the consumer, and what would be the consumer reaction, and is it getting you closer to your goals or not? that's being consumer centric.
So what could we do different
Yeah.
to really make sure that we contribute to making data at the center of all the decision making? Is there a trick that we are missing?
Mhm. Well, I think some companies' culture is just more data centric than others, so it's going to be easier probably to have an impact.
Mhm.
Financial institutions, insurance, they're always data centric. Others, probably it's a cultural thing, whether where's the power structure within an organization, and do you understand that, and are you there when decisions are being made, and are you contributing value? And a lot of times those decisions are CFO decisions influencing the CEO. And if you can't speak the language of the CFO, if you can't put what you're doing in financial terms for the organization, it becomes a language barrier and it becomes a disconnect. And then they're skeptical, right? Skeptical that you even understand what the company needs. So I think number one is learning to talk the CFO. I think the other thing is just a mindset change for the insights functional, especially the leader. Your job is not to generate research and insights. Your job is to change behavior and decisions of the company.
Great.
And that requires a very different type of person and motivation. And some people who join market research functions, they don't want to do that. They just want to do the work, right? Cool. And so, my advice, if they want to be me someday, is go work for a research firm and become a head of a research firm. Otherwise, you got to get in this and become a change agent inside the company. And it can start very small by influencing your brand manager, influencing the CMO, influencing someone in sales. So we've learned a lot about behavioral economics in the consumer, but we haven't really applied it to how we engage in our own organization.
Beautiful.
How you talk to your CFO is different than how you talk to a CMO. Exactly. And you have to be able to know how to do that so they'll take you seriously, I think.
Thank you. So, that actually leads me to another question. What kind of leadership and influencing skills we should be cultivating? What kind of muscles we need to create so that we can be outstanding at exactly what you said? How to talk a different language to the CFO versus CMO versus a CEO. What kind of skills do we need to acquire in terms of leadership skills and influencing skills?
Yep. It is about leadership skills, which is, I think, influencing skills and having influence, trust, and credibility is part of leadership building. I think my advice for someone who's early in their career versus late in their career would be a little bit different depending on your level. The one thing that I think is really important is to understand organizational behavior and being org savvy. So there's a book called Organizational or Survival of the Savvy, High Integrity Politics for Career and Business Success. And I've had those authors come and actually do workshops with my team. Politics is a dirty word, probably even more today than any time. But the reality is they exist in every organization. And if you don't understand how the game is played, you're just going to be run over.
Yeah.
And we see, very over political people in organizations and under political people in organizations. And I'd say insights functions and analytics tend to be under political. They love the work and they just want the work to stand for itself. And if I do the amazing work, I'm going to get promoted. But I had an aha moment that's not how you get promoted. You get promoted by, is your work valued and is it used, and are you leading and influencing? So definitely need to get more organizational savvy, understand how politics works, and practice it and get outside your comfort zone. It's not fun, but the shocker for most insights people is your career is often, career conversations are often happening when you're not in the room, and they're asking, is this person a leader? Is this person ready? And they're not talking about your functional skills. They're talking about your leadership skills.
Awesome. That's really, really. Now, you have coached and developed lots and lots of people along the way from your, days at Frito to Pernod to, now you're in Mondelez. What kind of advice and coaching do you give to, let's say, people who are just entering the industry? Let's bucket it into two groups: people who enter in the
Yep.
industry to the research agency side, and the ones who enter into the client side. So let's talk about the client side. What kind of coaching and advice would you give them to make sure that they put their career in the right trajectory from
Yes.
day one?
So I would say performance and doing your job well is number one. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to show that you can perform and do your job well. So learning that functional, technical, whatever skills you need
Mhm.
and being great at them is really important. That's like table stakes.
Table stakes.
I'd say, but even then, go a little bit outside your job description.
Hmm.
Leaders and high value individuals are people who bring new thinking, new ideas to the table, and that might be beyond what you're currently working on. So for me, I happen to love reading and content, and I read about the fashion industry and the music industry, and I can start to connect dots. Like, oh, that what they're doing over there sounds something like if we adapted it, we could do that here. Fast fashion, whatever. What
Hmm.
does that look like here? And you can start to bring new thinking and ideas, and you become a highly valued, trusted advisor.
Hmm.
And then you're seen as like we got to give this person more responsibility, broader scope. So, um, you know, again, it's proving yourself and adding value. It's always about adding value. Um, for the research supplier side,
Yeah.
again, it's how do you become a trusted advisor, a true partner versus a vendor? And you probably can't do it with every client, but there's probably clients you probably need to go double down on.
Hmm.
And I know the pressure of how expensive things are and your, pressure to grow your margin, which means you often want to automate, systematize, have a product that you can offer lots of people. But what companies need sometimes are very bespoke uh, application or to solve a really specific problem that's unique to their category.
Hmm.
So how do you do both? Definitely offer those great products that are going to be cheaper, faster, better, but also help them innovate and solve the big problems. And you have to be business savvy. You have to understand the business problems to solve for your client, not just waiting for the RFP. And I've had a few partner vendors that have done that with me,
Hmm.
and I love them, and I still go back to them over and over for 20 years now,
Yeah.
right?
We all
You
do have
just
one. Yeah.
exactly, and it's
Yeah.
probably pretty person dependent too. It's not even company
Company.
dependent.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you'll follow a person even to a new provider. So that's a way that I'd say someone on the supplier side could really stand out.
On a slightly different note, Pam, go back to the day you started your career, or the year you started your career. Based on all the wisdom that you've acquired over the years,
Mhm.
what advice would you give uh, to the earlier self of Pam?
Yeah, I first like I would tell myself to get out of your own way. Um, I spent way too much time doubting my
Mm,
abilities. I had extreme imposter complex. I
mm,
never was able to go back and get my master's. So I have an
mm,
undergrad from a small state college, and I was working with some hot shot MBAs,
mm,
and
mm,
I felt like I wasn't I was in over my head at first, but I just doubled down. I started reading academic journals and going to every conference, and especially the academic ones, MSI, and I just was able to then start having conversations with the top academics on the latest thinking in marketing, and I knew the fundamentals and the principles. I'd say I could hold my own with any
mm,
professor now,
mm,
but I had to do that myself. So because of that, I would have loved to have just spent less time doubting
mm.
and in that anxiety of am I good enough? And just said just go for it. Anyway,
So bravery, that
bravery, it is bravery
it
and
is
confidence.
confidence. Yeah.
And that's a hard one because you start even putting points on the board and you still are struggling with that confidence, but
No, that's great, and I think therein you've outlined your own secret formula for success. Just trust yourself, be brave,
Yes.
put yourself out there, and don't doubt yourself. Don't ever doubt yourself. You.
Yeah.
That's a great. Yeah.
One thing when I start to doubt myself, and it even happens now,
Mhm.
I say to myself, if not you, then who? And
That's
I look around everyone and like if you're not great at this, if you're not the one that could do this best, who else is there? And you quickly realize there's no one else that knows as much, that has the
mm,
experience as much, that has as
mm,
much data, that has as much insight. You have to be the one. And
mm.
so, I can remember many times I'd be in a meeting and I'd say, shoot, I knew that last year. I knew that was going to happen. Why didn't I speak up?
That's the key thing. Why didn't I speak up?
Why didn't I speak
Why
up?
didn't I speak up? So that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So just zooming out of some of those wonderful insights that you shared about yourself, and what do you think are the biggest opportunity for the insights industries today?
Mm,
Given that world of technology is impacting
mm.
everything we do. So what is the biggest opportunity?
Again, for corporate side, and I think that as I've dug into it, we've come a long way than
Mm,
even 20 years ago or 10 years ago. That mindset shift of I'm not about providing research, I'm about driving decision making.
mm,
Um, and having an impact. So that's what I'd say, like 75% of the effort you're giving should be
mm,
doing that, not
yeah.
doing the work.
Mm,
That's hard because we're thinly resourced. We sometimes have more money than we can spend, but which causes just too much work and not enough thinking time. So really pushing for clarity on priorities and having the time to do the change management that has to happen with the work you're doing and not just doing the work.
mm,
Um, is key, I think. Um, and maybe there's ways. I'll say one thing. When I've tried to transform an insights function to that, a lot of them have an identity crisis
true.
because they see themselves as great market researchers and
Yeah.
great analytics people. And that's who I am and that's my identity.
Mm.
And you have to say that's not the most value add. Like, let's outsource that. Let's automate that. And they're like, but if we automate it, what is my role? Who am
What
I?
do I have a job?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you have to paint the picture of what could be. And I would say a lot of people like get excited and they're like, this is amazing. I'm going to have an even bigger role in the company.
Yeah.
And others are freaked out. And
That's
it's
okay.
probably not for them. And that's okay. That's
That's
right.
okay.
That's
That's
okay.
okay. They'll
Mm-hmm.
be better off somewhere else. Is there any one threat that comes to your mind which you think could create a
Mm.
black swan moment for the insights industry?
Yeah, I would say uh, 10 years ago,
Mm.
15 years ago, I thought it was going to be all the consulting companies,
Mm.
McKinsey and BCG. They were all getting into our space. I don't know if you
Mm.
remember that, and maybe they
Mm.
still are, right?
Mm.
Um, and they have that ear of the
Mm.
senior most leaders, and they're probably saying, "You're not getting enough from your insights function. Let me do this for you."
Mm.
And
Mm.
quickly you can be outsourced. So I thought that was the biggest threat. And so I used that as sort of a catalyst to lift my team to
Okay.
be more than
Mm.
just researchers. I don't know if that's as much of a risk anymore. I think there's, the McKinseys and BCGs have had sort of a tough time lately of their own kind of credibility and respect. So, but I do think that could come from more internal functions. So internal functions taking more and more of our responsibilities because there is power in it.
Mm.
So where is your analytics sitting? Where is pricing and RGM type work? Might be over in IT, it might be over in finance. I call these shadow insights organizations,
Mm.
and they're popping up because there's a need and a real gap that we're not filling.
And we are not filling that. That
That
is
we're not filling that gap, and that goes
exactly.
back to are you answering the biggest questions? And
Mm.
if you're just serving brand marketing, those questions will be answered somewhere else by someone else. And again, that's just going to shrink our
Right.
scope and credibility.
If you're not careful, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fabulous, fabulous. Thank you, Pam, for a really,
Yeah.
really stimulating session today. Really appreciate the time that you've taken.
Oh, enjoyed
And
it.
Thanks for joining the Insights and Innovators podcast from Market Research Institute International. Click subscribe to never miss an episode and visit us at mrii.org for more market research insights.